Hello, everyone. We are here live February 15th with Laura from Colombia, Reza here from Toronto. How are you, Laura?
I'm really good. And how are you, Reza?
Good, good, good. We are here to help everyone answer the questions about the Ontario International Student Stream, which is the under the Ontario Provincial Nominee Program, which we also call OINP for the abbreviations. So we're going to get into that discussion, talk about the eligibility, processing times, advantages and disadvantages. Um, are you ready, Laura?
Yes, and I have some questions related with this program because I heard a
Perfect.
lot of things with that, so I want to make you some questions. But first, I want to explain the topic in Spanish.
Yes, go ahead.
Ok. Hola a todas las personas aquí en otro directo de Ingwe Canadá, a todas las personas de habla hispana. El tema de hoy va a ser el programa de nominación provincial de Ontario para los estudiantes internacionales. Vamos a estarles explicando de qué trata, las ventajas y las desventajas. Entonces vamos a estar hablando primero en inglés y yo voy a estar haciendo la traducción, como siempre, en español.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Thank you, Laura. So, what are your questions here, Laura? Tell me.
Okay, Reza, I have a question. For example, if I want to apply for a Canadian PR,
Yeah.
what are the advantages of studying this program in Ontario?
Yeah, that's an important question, right? Why should you study in Ontario, and why should you consider this program, the Ontario International Student Stream, as a path to PR? You can apply under this program directly for PR after you graduate as an international student inside of Canada, right? And the advantages are there's the language and work experience requirements, Laura, are not mandatory. And there's no points lost due to your age. So if you're 22 or 62, you don't lose or gain points on age, which is an advantage for many people. So in those terms, it's easier than express entry for the points because language requirements are not 100% mandatory, work experience not mandatory, and you don't lose points for age or gain points for age as a matter of fact. So that's those are the main advantages, Laura.
The disadvantages are really interesting. I want to let our viewers in Spanish know about disadvantage. So, la primera pregunta que estaba realizando la Reza es que cuáles son las ventajas de estudiar este programa de denominación provincial en Ontario para los estudiantes internacionales. Y es que este programa es una forma de conseguir la residencia permanente de forma directa después de graduarse. Y pues entre esas cosas es obviamente si tiene una empresa dentro de la provincia que lo apoye. Algo positivo en este caso es que la experiencia laboral no es obligatoria y tampoco tener una edad en específico. La persona puede tener 50, 60 años, menos años y eso no le va a restar ni sumar puntos.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. What other questions do you have, Laura?
Yes, we were talking about the advantage. Now I want to know about the disadvantage. So, what are these disadvantages to study and apply in this program?
That's perfect question, Laura. I mean, you have to know the disadvantages before applying. You can't just focus on the advantages, which is perfect. So there's one main disadvantage, which I will let you know at the end of our discussion today when we talk about eligibility, but just in a few minutes. But the minor disadvantages, the smaller ones, are that there's employer minimum revenue requirements. So the employer, the Canadian company who will give you a job offer when you graduate, needs to either have $1 million of sales in the past year or 500,000, depending on whether they're inside the Greater Toronto area or outside of that location. And another small disadvantage is that the PR processing will take 15 to 20 months after you apply and you receive your nomination. And compared to express entry, that's a little bit slow. So those are the disadvantages, Laura.
Okay. Hablando de las desventajas de este programa de nominación provincial de Ontario, hay una desventaja principal, pero vamos a estar hablando más adelante de esta desventaja, pero entre las desventajas menores es que, como lo había dicho anteriormente, uno tiene que tener una oferta de empleo en una empresa dentro de la provincia que lo apoye y ese empleador, dependiendo si está dentro o fuera de Canadá, tiene que tener un ingreso mínimo de $1,000,000 o $500,000, depende de dónde se encuentre ubicada la empresa. Y además, este proceso para conseguir la residencia puede demorar entre 15 a 20 meses.
Perfect, Laura. Thank you.
I have
So, yeah, go ahead. I want to ask if
yes.
you have any further questions.
Okay, yes, I have another question here. I don't know if you can share the points-based matrix for the Ontario provincial program with us, so we can calculate our score.
Yeah, that's excellent question, Laura. And of course, we can share it. Right now, it's difficult to go through the whole points-based system. But if you send us a request through email, we can always attach the points-based the matrix and share it with our viewers and our audience. So send us a quick email, and we can attach the points and send it out to you if you need. If you need somebody, to give you the points in case you can't find it online. So we do have it and we can share it with our audience.
Ok, para todas las personas aquí interesadas en saber la matriz de los puntos para este programa, pueden decirnos a nosotros por correo electrónico y podemos ver si cumple con la elegibilidad, porque pues estamos aquí para ayudar.
Yes. What are some other points, Laura, that you think are important to know for this program?
Sure. I want to know about the eligibility criteria for a person that is an international student. What is this eligibility criteria to apply for the PR under this program?
Yeah, under the OINP, the eligibility is that you graduate as an international student, you graduate from a post-secondary institution inside of Canada. And it should be a degree, diploma, or certificate. There's very specific requirements about this, which we will discuss right after. So I'm going to expand on that about this degree, diploma, certificate, because there's fine print, very small print, and many people miss this. So this is one of the most important eligibility. So we're going to discuss this right after. And some other requirements are that you have full-time job offer from a Canadian company with a NOC 0A or B job, right? And the employer has to have the eligibility, right? The minimum revenue and the minimum Canadian employees, right? So if you don't have a NOC 0A or B job offer, then you would go under a different program in the OINP, right? But in this program, you need to be in 0A or B, and it can be minimum wage. So the job offer does not have to median, it can be minimum, but be careful. The minimum wage should be for that position. So if you're a supervisor or a manager, it will not be the minimum wage of the province. It will be the minimum wage of that occupation. So be careful. You need to intend to reside in Ontario. So that's another requirement. And you need to have status, legal status in Ontario when you're applying until you receive a nomination. So be careful here. If your work permit is expiring before you get a nomination, you're in trouble. And you should have resided inside of Canada for 50%, more than 50% of your time studying for the program. So what does this mean? It means if you studied more than 50% of your studies remotely during COVID, you will not be eligible for the OINP, Ontario Provincial Nominee Program. So that's one important factor, Laura, that people may miss. They're back home in Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, Dubai, Turkey, Vietnam, China, India, studying remotely. And as soon as they pass 50% or hit 50% of their studies remotely, they will not be eligible under this specific provincial program. And afterwards, I'm going to expand a little bit more about the eligibility of the program.
Okay, that's interesting, and I want to say that in Spanish too. So, para todas las personas aquí de habla hispana, les voy a decir cuáles son los criterios de elegibilidad para poder aplicar a este programa de nominación provincial de Ontario para los estudiantes internacionales. Entonces, uno de los criterios que es muy importante es haberse graduado de una institución postsecundaria en Canadá. Entonces, ese vendría siendo uno de los más importantes. Vamos a hablar ahorita más adelante de este aspecto en específico, pero otras cosas que se tienen que tener en cuenta es una oferta de empleo de tiempo completo. Esta oferta tiene que tener unos requisitos y es que tiene que estar bajo un NOC 0, A o B. Ya los que están en un NOC C o en NOC D no se pueden postular a este programa porque tiene que ser un NOC 0, A o B la oferta. Y como lo había dicho anteriormente, tiene que ser el empleador debe tener un ingreso mínimo de $1,000,000 canadienses o $500,000 canadienses, dependiendo de si encuentra dentro o fuera de Toronto. Otro de los criterios es que tenga la intención de residir en Ontario y que mantenga un estatus legal dentro de Canadá hasta la nominación. Es decir, si se le vence ya sea el permiso de trabajo antes de recibir respuesta, probablemente ya no va a cumplir con esos criterios de elegibilidad. Siempre tiene que mantener con un estatus legal hasta recibir esa nominación y haber residido dentro de Canadá durante más de la mitad de sus estudios. Es decir, si vio el 60% de los estudios fuera de Canadá de forma remota, entonces no se podría aplicar a este programa. Entonces esos son como los criterios de elegibilidad.
Yeah,
Mm,
so that's great. Thank you, Laura, for explaining that also in Spanish. What other points do you think are important for everyone to know?
yes, I have a question. You were talking about the graduation from a post-secondary institution. So
Yes.
can you explain a bit more about this degree, diploma, or certificate eligibility for this Ontario International Nominee Program?
Are you asking for somebody specific or just general, Laura?
Well, for someone specific, because I have a friend that study a 1 year certificate in marketing at Centennial College. So I want to know if can she be eligible.
Oh, okay. So unfortunately, the bad news for your friend Laura is that a 1 year certificate has very strict requirements for eligibility under this program. And that program that you're talking about, I'm quite familiar with it. And the admission requirements to this marketing program of 1 year do not meet the OINP, Ontario PNP requirements. So your friend will be refused if she applied with a job offer. Even if she met all the criteria, she had the job offer, she would be refused. And the main reason is OINP will look at the admission requirements of the program that you graduated in, Canada. If the admission requirement says degree, right, it's okay. But if it says degree or diploma, it will be refused. Or if it says degree or diploma or work experience, equivalent work experience, it will be refused. So the only way to get out of this is to study a 2 year or more program, Laura, because then there is no requirement for the admission to that program. So basically means you study a 1 year certificate. If the admission to that program is not only just a degree, but other diplomas or work experience, you will be refused. If you study for a 2 year or more program, it does not matter what the admission requirements are. So this is a point that many people miss. Many students have no idea before they come to Canada, and many people apply, they get refused, and they're wondering why. So it's a huge, huge point. If anybody's paying attention, this is the time to pay attention right now.
Sure. I think that this point is really important, so I want to explain it too in Spanish. Estaba haciendo una pregunta y que es muy importante sobre los estudios en Canadá y es que la pregunta era si había algún criterio en específico sobre los programas postsecundarios dentro de Canadá, el estudio. Y es que yo tengo un amigo que estudió un certificado de un año en marketing en Centennial College y pues me gustaría saber si ya era elegible y lo más probable que me estaba diciendo Reza es que la rechacen. Y eso es porque para los certificados de un año hay criterios más estrictos sobre los requisitos de admisión para ese programa. Entonces, si en la redacción de la admisión dice título o diploma o dice experiencia laboral equivalente, es dependiendo de lo que diga esa redacción, probablemente el programa de nominación provincial de Ontario no lo acepte. Entonces es mucho más estricto cuando son programas de un año, certificados de un año, mientras que los programas que son de 2 años o más no tienen esa restricción. Entonces toca leer bien esa redacción en lo de la admisión del programa para ver si se aplica o no aplica, porque no todos los programas de un año aplican.
Great. Thanks, Laura, for explaining that.
Yes. Also, I have a lot of questions.
No
So
worries, Laura. No worries. Go ahead. That's why we're here. We want to answer everyone's questions.
yeah, okay. In this case, what do you suggest to international students overseas who are now planning to apply here in Ontario to be eligible for the program?
The best advice, Laura, that we can give them is to take a minimum 2 year diploma, certificate, or degree, or whatever it is. It should be a minimum 2 year duration to be eligible for Ontario PNP provincial program, and potentially, if a TR to PR pathway opens, like last year, be also eligible for that, right? And a 3 year postgraduate work permit. So if you study 2 years, you have so many advantages, Laura. And that's the best advice we can give international students who are planning to come and apply to study here, especially in Ontario, but in general, other provinces we will give similar advice, but it doesn't have to be mandatory for other provinces to study more than 1 year. But in Ontario, we would highly, highly advise to study minimum 2 years.
Okay, I'm going to make this suggestion in Spanish too.
Yeah.
Nuestra sugerencia en estos casos, si van a escoger algún programa en Ontario para los estudiantes internacionales que nos están viendo en este momento y que se encuentran en el extranjero, es que se inscriban y realicen un programa de un diploma o algo por el estilo de mínimo 2 años. Porque si se realiza un programa de 2 años, no va a tener ninguna restricción para aplicar y ser elegible para este programa de nominación provincial de Ontario y además va a poder conseguir un PGWP de 3 años y pues también tendría la opción de TR to PR. Entonces hay varias opciones si se realiza un diploma mínimo de 2 años y esa es nuestra sugerencia. Si hay alguien que esté interesado en estudiar en Canadá y pues específicamente en Ontario. De hecho, vamos a tener un programa, un especial de YouTube en vivo para hablar sobre temas de educación. Entonces, esto es importante, pues más adelante lo estaremos hablando y son los temas o las cosas que no debes hacer cuando vas a estudiar como estudiante internacional en Canadá.
Perfect. Thank you, Laura.
Reza, another question that I have is about the draws that we have in Ontario. So, how frequently do they have the draws to invite applicants to apply for this permanent resident?
So basically, there's usually a draw every 2 or 3 months, and it depends on the OINP. So sometimes the frequency is more, and sometimes it's like could be every 3 months. It depends on their quota for the whole year, right? So usually I say on average 2 to 3 months there'll be a draw, and if you meet the minimum points for that PNP program, you will be invited to apply for your PR.
Okay, and how long does it take to receive the nominations before apply after apply? Sorry.
It will take about 3 to 4 months for a nomination to be issued by the provincial office in order for you to apply for your PR and potentially a bridging work permit.
Okay, I will say that in Spanish. Hablando ya acerca de los tiempos, entonces los sorteos que se realizan para este programa, siempre, bueno, este programa primero que todo se encuentra abierto y siempre está abierto y aproximadamente cada 2 o 3 meses se realiza un sorteo para este programa. Y el tiempo aproximado en que se tarda en recibir una nominación es de 3 a 4 meses aproximadamente.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Any other questions, Laura?
No worries about what you say. Thank you so much because this all sounds very tricky. So it's really important to have this in mind, all this information.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure. And one thing that we can say to our viewers today, the main point would be hashtag apply to Canada with a plan. That's, I think, our motto, and that's what it should be for you, everyone else as well. Is that if you um, if you plan to come and study in Canada or work or immigrate or move here or whatever, you need to come here with a plan. Don't just come here. Don't trust agencies to tell you what to do or what to study, right? Because they don't know the immigration rules, they don't know the details. So if you come here without a detailed immigration plan, you are leaving it up to the lottery. It's like, will I be lucky? But the point is, you don't need to be lucky. You just need to make sure you do your homework. You come with a plan, or you consult with a company like ours, a licensed company that can create a plan for you. And that's the best way we can advise our clients, Laura, and which we do. So we call it hashtag apply to Canada with a plan.
Ah, ok. Ya estamos terminando esta sección de preguntas que estamos haciendo, pero hay algo muy importante para todas las personas aquí en español que nos están viendo, y es que es muy necesario y cuando uno planea ir a Canadá, es pues ir a Canadá con un plan, o sea, organizar todo ese plan y no ir allá a Canadá sin saber qué es lo que se va a hacer bien. Entonces, ahí nuestra recomendación es ir a Canadá con un plan y no solamente solicitar o confiar en lo que nos dicen las agencias de educación, porque ellos no se especializan en la inmigración. Es siempre buscar lo mejor para poder pues emigrar a Canadá con un plan y no solamente con lo que nos dicen esas agencias de educación.
Perfect. Thanks for explaining to our viewers, Laura. And we should explain to our viewers now that we will be answering the live questions and comments on YouTube. And that could be about any immigration subject. And we're here every Tuesday and Thursday, right, Laura, to help our audience in answering questions and helping them out. Right, Laura?
Yeah, right.
Perfect. So if you're ready, we want to jump into the questions and comments. Ready?
Yeah, ready. I actually have a question here related with the Ontario International Nominee Program in Instagram.
Sure.
So I want to answer it. I will read you this. The person is Lin Lapte, and he's asking the following. When we get nominated for Ontario International Nominee Program Student Stream, do we have to pay again when using it to apply for PR with IRCC?
Yes. So it's a great question, Laura. Is do you have to pay twice?
Mhm.
Who do you have to pay if you're applying for your PR under the Ontario International Provincial Program, International Student Stream, right? You have to, when you are invited to apply, you will submit your documents and pay the province a fee, right? And then after you're nominated and you apply for your PR with the nomination, you have to pay the IRCC, the federal government, again, right? So you have to pay twice, Laura. So unlike express entry, right? Where you pay the IRCC once,
Mhm.
in this case you pay twice. Once to the province, and when that's done, you pay IRCC for your PR fees, which are standard, right?
Yeah, right.
And the provincial amount is, I believe, $1,500 for for the provincial international student stream for Ontario. So that's the application fee after you're invited.
Okay. He's when he talk about the Ontario International Nominee Program, he's talking about the master graduate stream.
Oh,
The answer is the same.
it's still the same.
Oh.
It's you still have to pay. You still have to pay.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's fine. Do you want to do the other questions?
Um. On Instagram, I don't see another question, so I think that we
Okay,
can
sure.
answer the questions on YouTube.
So there was a great question, by the way, Lauren. There's a great question by Marcos Noyola, and I think he also asked a question in Spanish. I don't know. I think it's the same thing in English and Spanish.
Yes.
I've already responded to him on the chat, but basically, the really good question is the Ontario Provincial Nominee Program for international students always open? And the answer is yes. The draws happen every several months, but it's always open. But for the other programs, sometimes it closes and opens. So be careful which provincial program you're talking about. For the international student stream, right now it's always open, and you just have to wait to be for a draw to be invited to apply.
Okay. I will explain that in Spanish too.
Perfect. Yeah.
Marcos Noyola nos está preguntando si este programa en Ontario siempre está abierto o lo cierran. Y la respuesta es que sí, que siempre está abierto este programa, solamente que se hace pues ya sorteo cada cierto tiempo. Y el tiempo aproximado en que se realizan esos sorteos es de cada 2 a 3 meses se realiza esto.
Great. Let's go to the other questions, Laura. So we've got a Spanish question, Laura, by Danilo's Chef. What do you think about this question? Can you read it and tell us what it is?
Yes, Danilo's chef. Hola Danilo, ¿cómo estás? He is asking if it is, well, the question is the following. Is it legal to work more than 20 hours for a week virtually in another country if I am living and studying full time in Canada?
Yeah, so you mean Danilo's question is if he's studying inside of Canada, he
Mhm.
wants to work in another country virtually?
That he is studying in Canada full time
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he has a job offer to work virtually in a company outside Canada for more than 20 hours.
That that's a great question, Laura. That's like the coolest question I've heard this year so far. So, a few points. Well, first of all, that work experience will not count towards Canadian immigration. The second point is he allowed to work more than 20 hours while um, studying in Canada but working remotely?
Mhm.
Technically, yes. And if you ask this question, anybody, like even if you call IRCC, they won't give you a proper response. The reason I'm saying that is because you're not working inside of Canada, you're working remotely. What they don't want you to do is to work full time while you're studying inside of Canada. But if you work remotely, that is not a restriction. However, be careful, because if you're applying for your PR later on or your postgraduate work and you mention, oh yeah, I was working 40 hours a week for and studying for a company, I don't know, maybe in Argentina, Peru, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, the officer might have issues, although there's no regulations against it. So work, make your money, but at the end of the day, make sure that you keep your application simple. So the answer is yes, you're allowed, but tread with caution, right? Because if the wrong officer is looking at your file and they don't know what they're doing, could create problems. So that's my answer, Laura. But great question. Great question.
Okay. Bueno, Danilo, esto es para responderte la pregunta. Buenas tardes primero. Y la pregunta ¿es legal trabajar más de 20 horas semanales de forma virtual en otro país si estás viviendo y estudiando tiempo completo en Canadá? Bueno, primero, les dijo que esta era una muy buena pregunta. Y hay dos cosas que se tienen que tener en cuenta. La primera es que ese tiempo que va a estar trabajando virtual no va a contar como experiencia laboral canadiense, sino por fuera. Y el otro punto es que si bien sí se puede trabajar más de 20 horas semanales en otro país estando en Canadá y estudiando en Canadá, toca ser muy precavido y tener mucho cuidado con esto para la aplicación ya más adelante de la residencia permanente. Es posible, sí, pero puede que tenga algunos problemas o algunas cosas que toca como revisar primero antes de realizar esto.
Thanks, Laura. Thank you. So we're going to go to some comments. Nasreen Ibrahimi says hello. Hello back, Nasreen. um, we have a question. I'll read it, and it's not, it's a basic one. Mohammed Mubarak says hello. I have two questions. If the French speaking program is for all persons between 467 and 475 points for express entry, and my points is 487. Yes, so it depends what you're talking about, Mohammed. If you're talking about express entry, because express entry doesn't differentiate the languages for the draws. And if it's for the PNP in Ontario, right, it's specifically sometimes for occupations. And they haven't had a draw recently for the French speakers. But if they did, it would be specific to those occupations or candidates that they would invite, right? So if you were 487, potentially they would not invite you. But again, each French draw for the Ontario PNP would have specific requirements beyond the points as well sometimes. So you have to be careful. His second question, which is a great question, Laura, this is an excellent question, is can I apply for visitor visa if I'm a candidate of express entry? And the answer is yes. If you are a candidate and you have not applied for your PR, you have not been invited, it will not affect your TRV, your temporary resident visa, which could be a study permit, work permit, or visitor visa. So great question, Mohammed. And let's answer that in Spanish too. So for our Spanish audience, Laura.
Yeah, sure. Tenemos una pregunta de Mohamed Mbarek que es muy interesante y muy buena, la verdad, y es que él está preguntando si se puede aplicar a la visa de turismo si un candidato en el Express Entry. Y la respuesta es que sí, sí se puede aplicar a la visa de turismo si es candidato a Express Entry y no va a perjudicar la aplicación del Express Entry.
Perfect. Let's go further to other questions. Let's see. Isabel Aguirre. Let's see. I've applied for several, but does that not be made on my and I will be traveling from God to QK. I'm gonna be continued over in the UK. Interesting question, Laura. This is a good question, actually. Lots of interesting questions today. So Isabella says, by the way, when I say your name in question, please put a hands, thumbs up on our YouTube so we know you're listening. So she says, I've applied for a study permit, but the decision by the embassy has not been taken yet. So there's no other decision issued, taken on my application. And I will be traveling from Ghana to the United Kingdom. And can the process for my study permit application be continued in the UK? No, Isabella, it will continue to be processed in Ghana, in Accra, and the decision will be rendered there. You cannot move embassies. It just doesn't work like that, okay? And if you wanted to reapply from UK, you need to be a resident of UK. You need to have some kind of status, not just as a tourist. So the answer to your question is unfortunately no. It will continue to be processed in Ghana. So Laura, I don't know if you want to answer that as well or explain that also to our viewers.
Yes, I can explain it in Spanish. I think that is an interesting question. Tenemos una pregunta en YouTube de Isabela Guiri y es que está diciendo que solicitó el permiso de estudio em, en Ghana y pues va a viajar de Ghana al Reino Unido. Entonces quiere saber si puede continuar con ese proceso en el Reino Unido. Y para este caso, si alguno de ustedes solicitó el permiso de estudio en su país y van a viajar y estar en otro país mientras esperan la respuesta, en este caso no van a poder cambiar de embajada, sino la aplicación se va a procesar en donde inicialmente se hizo. En este caso, con Isabela Guiri, que la hizo en Ghana, se va a continuar el proceso, es en Ghana y no en el Reino Unido, a donde va a ir.
Perfect, perfect. Let's go to other questions, Laura. Marcos has another one. Okay, so great question here, Laura. Marcos has another question. So Marcos, thank you for these great questions. If I study one student that does not provide, so if I'm studying at a school that does not provide a postgraduate work permit, does my partner still have the ability to receive an open work permit? Good question, Marcos. Here's the answer. While you're studying, and if it's a degree-based program in a private college, yes, your spouse would be eligible while you are a full-time eligible student studying. So your partner can receive an open work permit. So again, be careful. You need to be studying, not graduated. You need to be in a degree-based program. So if you're doing a 1 or 2 year program, which is not a degree-based program, your spouse, your partner, whoever will not be eligible for a spousal open work permit. So that's the answer, and I hope that was clear for you, Marco. Laura, I think it's good to also let our viewers know in Spanish.
Sure, okay. Otra pregunta que tenemos de Marcos Noyola, él está diciendo que si estudia en una institución que no proporciona el PGWP, la pareja tiene la elegibilidad para poder recibir un permiso de trabajo abierto. Y aquí depende, si el programa está basado en un título, si es un programa basado en un título o algo por el estilo, ya dentro de la institución, sí se puede recibir un permiso de trabajo abierto. De más, no.
Perfect. Thanks, Laura. So let's go to the other question. I think Marcos has another great question. Let's document this question. This is good. So hi again. Does my educational credential assessment evaluation, which was sent to IRCC automatically by WES, will that affect my study permit or visa application for the future? And the answer, Marcos, is no. Okay, it will not affect it. It will be sent automatically. It's available in the database. So IRCC, whenever they need it, they can just access it. Okay, but it will not affect your visa for studying or visiting Canada. So do not worry. Great question. Let's do that in Spanish as well, Laura.
Ok. Otra pregunta de Marcos, que está haciendo varias preguntas, es que él está hablando y está diciendo que su evaluación de ECA, que es una forma de validar los estudios en el país, fue enviada a IRCC de forma automática por WES, que es la empresa que hace, una de las empresas que hace el ECA. Entonces, si esto afecta la solicitud de visa de estudio para el futuro, y la respuesta es no. Esto se envía automáticamente por WES, pero esto no va a afectar la visa de estudio en el futuro.
Thanks, Laura. Appreciate it. Let's see. Other question. So Lynn Lamptey. Let's see. I resume master's stream now, but I will also call for CC in May. Ooh, very interesting question, Laura. Laura, I'm gonna call today our audience full of interesting questions. I like it. I like it. I like these challenging questions. So Lynn Lamptey says, I've received my Ontario PNP Master's Graduate Stream nomination. So congratulations, Lynn. So she's ready to apply for PR. She's applied under the Master's Graduate Stream, okay? But she says, I also qualified for the CEC, the Canadian Experience class in Express Entry in May. Okay, so in May this year, she will have 1 year Canadian work experience. Should I apply for the OINP or wait for the CEC draw? My PGWP expires in July. Oh my God, this is like a movie. This is crazy, Lynn. So basically, she's saying, should I wait for the 1 year work experience and continue with express entry, or apply for under the provincial program? Well, what I would say, Lynn, is keep the nomination, keep the application ready. If you know that your points will be over 460 points, so you will be eligible and potentially be invited if we have a CEC drawn express entry. The nomination certificate, okay, you have to be careful because it will expire. So hold the nomination certificate, okay? Apply maybe 1 week before or 2 weeks before the expiration for your PR under the OINP. And also continue with the express entry, okay? And what will happen is if you have a draw in July, okay, or May or June or July, and you're invited and you apply under express entry, you can withdraw your OINP PR application because it will take much longer for OINP PR application processing than express entry. But be careful. If you do the OINP, you can easily do a bridging work permit to allow you to stay in Canada longer and work, right? So you're taking a risk between May to July. If you're invited in May or June, yes, withdraw your OINP application, do the express entry. But if you're not, at least you have the OINP PR application that you're processing, right? You've already applied before the nomination expires because they're so slow with the PNP, right? You don't want to, you have time to do both. So that means you can withdraw the OINP PR and apply the express entry if you're selected on time. Be careful, your postgraduate work permit doesn't have a lot of time. So I know that was a little bit confusing, but but my answer was do both, because one is so slow, one is fast, and you only have like a 2-3 month gap. So apply for that one before the expiration of the nomination certificate, and then if you're selected in express entry between May to June, withdraw the PR application with the OINP, and you don't have to. You can withdraw the processing fee from IRCC. Okay, so I don't know, Laura. You wanted to give it a try? Do the short version. Don't do the long version.
Yeah, I will try to, to explain it.
Do the short version. Do the
Mm,
short version.
sure. Otra pregunta que la verdad es muy, muy buena esta pregunta, también la realizó el AMTEI, y él está diciendo que él recibió una nominación para el programa de Ontario International Nominee Program de la maestría. Entonces, él dice que la recibió, pero también en mayo probablemente sea elegible para el Canadian Experience Class. Entonces, él no sabe si aplicar a esa invitación que tiene de Ontario Nominee Program o esperar a los sorteos de Canadian Experience Class. Y el permiso de trabajo que tiene va a vencer en julio. Entonces, es un caso un poquito complicado y toca pues analizar bien lo de la situación, pero a grandes rasgos, lo ideal es ver cuándo se va a vencer esa invitación del programa de Ontario y 2 semanas antes, una semana antes de que se venza esa invitación y que sea justo cercano al tiempo del Canadian Experience Class de la invitación, aceptar esta invitación de Ontario. Luego, si más adelante aplica para el Canadian Experience Class y es seleccionado, ahí sí se recomienda retirar la invitación del programa de Ontario y aplicar al Canadian Experience Class, porque el de Ontario es un proceso mucho más largo, mientras que el otro es del Express Entry es mucho más corto. Entonces toca jugar con los tiempos y ver si la situación de esto se da así o no. Igualmente es como esperar y ir viendo cómo avanza.
Perfect. Thank you, Laura. So let's jump in some other question. So Likan Troop is asking, or no, I think we missed it. Hold on. Okay. Mohammed says thank you. Thank you back, Mohammed. Appreciate it. Isabella is asking another question. So she's saying, if I apply for a study permit today in September, how long will it take to be processed in Ghana? You're looking at 3 to 5 months, 3 to 4 months, not less than 3 months. That's for sure. Likan Troop 78. I think that's Alejandro, is it? Or
Alvaradejo.
Alvaro, yeah. Hi, I'm in the process for my study permit. My resources were in crypto accounts and a special separated part of the bank account to protect it. I can put it in my bank account, but the bank statement won't show the whole history. What can I do to provide proof of my funds? Ooh. These are crazy questions today, Laura. I don't know what it is today. Maybe it was Valentine's Day yesterday. Everybody has all these unusual questions. So I think that's a great question, Laura. I think we have to document this. That basically somebody has crypto funds. They need to show proof of funds when they're applying for maybe a study permit, work permit. But the bank, due to cryptocurrency, will not show the history. Take screenshots, Lisandro Alvajodere. Take screenshots if possible, or put an explanation letter in. Okay, as long as you have it in the bank account, there's no history. But maybe you have it in the bank account when you convert it to crypto, right? Originally, and then when you convert it back. So in your bank account, maybe it should show. If you have nothing, then go with what you have, put an explanation, and hope for the best there. Okay. So let's do that in Spanish, Laura, and then we'll go further.
Ok. Hola Jorge Albradejo, gracias por tu pregunta, que fue muy buena, la verdad. Y respondiendo lo tuyo con el proceso del permiso de estudio y de que los recursos están en cuentas ya de cripto, entonces, ¿qué deberías hacer ahí para poder proporcionar lo de los fondos? Lo ideal es ver si puedes tomar pantallazos en donde se demuestre como un historial o transacciones o algo por el estilo de esas cuentas cripto en donde no se puede ver el historial. O en caso de que no se pueda nada de eso, sí sería como redactar una carta explicando bien esta situación.
Perfect. Thanks. So that was a great question. Let's see. So Mohammed Mubarak says one more question. This is a great question, Laura. Let's get into this one. So after receiving the permanent residency with an invitation from Ontario, for example, can I change my province, like move my province when I arrive to Canada? And what is the solution if I find a job in another province? So Mohammed, if you land here with a PR, after you land with a PR, there's no restrictions. But if you're here inside of Canada with a work permit or you're waiting for your PR to be processed, you need to stay in Ontario. Until you have your PR card in hand, don't change province. Afterwards, your intentions will change. That's normal. And nobody can stop you from moving provinces because that's a basic right every Canadian permanent resident and citizen has inside of Canada. Let's do that in Spanish.
Did you say something, Reza? I didn't hear.
Oh, you didn't hear the. Oh, that's weird. Is my video a little bit blurry, you think? Hold on.
Well, no, it's better.
Yeah, it's a little bit problem. Okay. Yeah, no, I was answering Mohammed's question, Laura. Did you see the question?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Can
Uh,
you move provinces after you arrive with your PR if you were nominated for your PR through the provincial program like Ontario? And I mentioned that after you have your PR card in hand, yes. But before that, never. Okay? So if you can just do like explain in Spanish,
ajá,
that'll be great.
ok. Otra pregunta que realizó Mohamed, es que si después de recibir ya una invitación, la residencia permanente, con la invitación de Ontario y todo, después ya recibir la residencia permanente, ¿se puede cambiar de provincia cuando llegue a Canadá o no? La respuesta es si ya se tiene la residencia permanente, sí se puede cambiar de provincia. Si no se tiene esa residencia permanente, no.
Perfect. Thank you, Laura, for explaining in Spanish. So Lynn says thank you. Thanks, Reza. Thank you, Lynn, for bringing such great question. Elvin Duras has a question. I'll just read it first, Laura. Hi, social service and community worker, 2 years DIP program, permanent full-time job offer from a nonprofit. I want to ask your employer criteria includes nonprofits. Unfortunately, Alvin, that's a great question. So the question would be, Laura, whether if you have a job offer in Ontario from a nonprofit organization, whether that would be eligible for the OINP, especially the international student stream. So Alvin, you need the sales. It doesn't matter if it's a registered charity, nonprofit, it doesn't matter. And a lot of them, they have revenue. They just are not for profit. So be careful. The eligibility for the OIMP is sales revenue, not profit. Okay. So if your employer is a nonprofit, it does not have revenue or sales of minimum 500,000 or 1 million, depending on the location around or inside of GTA, Greater Toronto Area, then if they don't have it, you're not eligible. You cannot, like your employer is not eligible. But if they have the revenue and no profit, then yes, it's possible. So check with your employer and then decide. So that was a great question, Laura, and I
Ujú.
think we can also answer that in Spanish for our viewers in the Latin American countries.
Ok, sure. Tenemos una pregunta de Elba Honduras y esta persona está diciendo que es un trabajador de servicio social y trabajador comunitario. Entonces, después de recibir la oferta de trabajo permanente de tiempo completo para el programa de Ontario, de lo que hemos dicho anteriormente desde el comienzo, este empleador, ¿cómo se pueden evaluar esos criterios de elegibilidad si los cumple, ya que es una organización sin ánimos de lucro? En este caso, aunque sea una organización sin ánimos de lucro, lo que se va a evaluar son los ingresos que genera por ventas. Entonces, toca analizar cuántos son los ingresos que genera por ventas y ya saben que tiene que cumplir, dependiendo de donde se encuentre, mínimo $500,000 o $1,000,000, esos ingresos.
Thank you, Laura. So let's see what else we have. Marcos has a great question. Okay, so let's put this as one of those good questions. Does the minimum amount of funds for a family of 3 as 17,000? Does that amount have to be in the main applicant's bank account, or can it be in the partner's bank account as well? It can be. We usually recommend in the main account, but if you're applying together, or even if you're not, if they can provide a financial undertaking, right, for you, then you can apply with the money in your partner's account. But if it's in your account, you're fine. If it's in your partner's account, you should have them take a financial undertaking form or letter notarized and include that in your application. Okay, so that's what I would recommend instead of moving the whole money over. Or if it's in a joint account, then you don't need any letters. So why don't you just do that? Put it into a joint account and save yourself a lot of paperwork, right?
Ujú. I think that it's an interesting question, so I want to answer it in
Yeah,
Spanish too.
sure.
Una pregunta de Marcos Noyola, él está diciendo, bueno, que la cantidad mínima de fondos para una familia para aplicar a Canadá es de $17,000 canadienses. Entonces está preguntando si esta cantidad tiene que estar en la cuenta bancaria principal del solicitante o se puede probar en la cuenta de los socios, o sea, de otros miembros de la familia, ya sea la pareja o algo así. Entonces, como la cantidad es de $17,000, lo ideal es que sí se encuentre en la cuenta del aplicante principal, pero en caso de que no se encuentre ahí, pues se puede hacer una carta de responsabilidad financiera y mostrarse los otros fondos de las otras personas.
Thank you, Laura, for that explanation for our Spanish viewers. Elvin says, much clearer. Thank you. Licantropo says, great, thanks. Laura, y Reza, you guys rule. So thank you, Licantropo. And another great question, and I think this will be the last question, Laura, that we can document for today. Does moving provinces with a provincial nominee permanent residence card in your hand affect your future Canadian citizen application? No, Marcos. As long as there's no documented proof that you did not originally intend to reside in the province that you received your PR, there will be no, it will not affect your application. But if there's some kind of proof or documents or some witness that says, no, Marcos never intended to do this, it was all a lie, everything he filled out on the application was a lie, yeah, they can come after you, but that's rare. So technically, no, unless there's proof against it. Okay. So that's our last question, Laura. You can do that in Spanish and we'll take off and we'll see everybody back on Thursday.
Ok, ya estamos respondiendo nuestra última pregunta aquí en este directo. Ya saben que estamos nuevamente el jueves por la mañana. Y la última pregunta es que si es posible moverse de una provincia a otra provincia luego de haber recibido esa residencia permanente ya de nominación provincial, y si esto afecta a la futura solicitud de ciudadanía. Y la respuesta es que no afecta, si se puede mover de una provincia a otra después de recibir esa residencia, y no afecta a una futura solicitud de ciudadanía, porque a pesar de que uno, pues, en la aplicación para una nominación provincial pone un interés, una expresión de interés en donde dice por qué se quiere quedar en la provincia, en caso de que ya reciba la residencia permanente, si consigue otras razones para irse a otra provincia, puede hacerlo perfectamente, y la única forma en la que no se podría hacer eso es si hay algún testigo en donde diga que no, que él estuvo mintiendo en la aplicación y que su intención nunca fue quedarse en la provincia, lo cual es algo muy raro que pase, pero en ese caso sí habría un problema. Pero de resto, si uno puede moverse de una provincia a otra luego de conseguir esa residencia.
Perfect. Thank you, Laura. Really appreciate it. Thank you to our audience out there. If you haven't pressed the like button, please press it. Thank you, Laura, for joining us from Colombia today. And again, signing off, everyone. Laura from Colombia, Reza from Toronto. We're back here on Thursday, right, Laura?
Right.
And
Thursday.
on Thursday, we're going to be talking about, what are we going to be talking about on Thursday? How to apply for your postgraduate work permit from outside of Canada. So that's going to be a hands-on screen share session where we'll go through the eligibility and how to fill out the postgraduate work permit application form from outside of Canada for students who've returned to their country after graduation or studied remotely, because you know now that up to the end of this year, you can be eligible to study 100% remote and be eligible for postgraduate work permit. So we'll see everyone on Thursday morning, sharp 9 a.m., 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's it then. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Reza. Bye.
Take care.